Welcome to Object Oriented Programming using Java. In this session, we'll be discussing about what is the use of static keyword in Java. Basically, static keyword is used for creating static variables and methods. Let's start with the introduction about static keyword in Java. Static keyword can be used to create a class level members such as class variables and class methods. So it is different from instance variables and instance methods. So basically, static members can be accessed using the class name itself. There is no need of object to access the static members, both the data and methods. It can be accessed before any objects of its class are created. So it means that static members, since it is a class member, there is no need of object to access or reference the static variables or methods. So without any object, we can able to access the static members like variables and methods. So here you may think that using object can we access? Yes, of course, using object also we can access the static members, but it is not needed. Usually the static data and methods are referenced by using a class name. So that is a recommended way of accessing the static data and methods. And we can create both static method and variables using static keyword. First we'll discuss about what is static variables. So instance variable we can change using static keyword. So it becomes a global variable to the class. So by that we can create an instance variable for the class, right? So that instance variable we can convert as a class variable by using a static keyword. So when objects are created, no copy of static variable is made. So what is the meaning of this statement is the static variable create a single memory location. Single memory will be created for one static variable. So no matter whatever how many objects you are creating, so only single memory location will be created. So it means the static data will be acting like a common data for the whole class. So if we create 100 objects, only one memory will be allocated for the static variable. It can be accessed by class name without creating object. Let us understand how we can create static data. For example, here we have a class, my class. Inside, if I want to create static variables, so before creating a data variable, we have to apply static keyword, then int a equal to 100. We can also create empty static variable. This will be initialized as 0. That is a default value of the integer. So based on the data type, the variable will be initialized for the static. How to access the static variable? Here it can be accessed by class name, right? So we can, what is a class name? My class is the class name. So if you want to access static variable a, we can use my class dot a. The same way we can access the b using my class dot b. So you'll be getting the output 100 and 0. And there is another concept called static block we can use. Static block is written by using a static keyword, then followed by the curly bracket. It is basically used to initialize only static variables. It is used to initialize only static variables. For example, here I have a static variable integer a, which is actually assigned as 100. And I have created a empty static variable called b. The default value of b is 0. The default value is 0. If you want to initialize this static variable later, we can do it by using this static block. Static block can be created by like this: static curly bracket, close the curly bracket. Inside you can access the static variable b and you can provide the value to the static data. Later you can access the static variable by using the class name dot a, class name dot b. So this way we can create static variables. Now let us understand the difference between the instance variables and static variables. So for example, we have a instance variable b and static variable a. So when you apply static keyword, it becomes a static variable. Otherwise, normally we used to create instance variable. So what is the difference is, here the A is a class data. A is a class data and B is a instance data. Instance means object data. So for if you create 100 object, 100 B reference will be created. 100 memory for B will be created. And if you create 100 object, only one memory for A will be created. Since A is a static, it is a common for all the object. So for one class, only one memory will be created for the static data. So here we can understand by using a one program demonstration. So I'll start with one example demonstration. So in Eclipse IDE, I have created a program. So here I'm going to add one more class called sample. So inside this class, so I'm going to create two variables. One is static variable. The next one is normal instance variable, that is object variable. For example, the instance variable we can create like this, int x, and static variable we can use static int y. So inside I want to check the memory, how the memory is created and how the value is getting updated. So for that I want to call this constructor and I want to increment the both values. So whenever I call this constructor, I want to increment x value, I want to increment y value. So I want to check the memory location of both x and y, whether it is a single or whether it is an independent memory location. So for that I have created a constructor here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create three objects. For example, sample s1 equal to new sample. So when I create first object, this will call the first time, one time the constructor will be called, the x value will be incremented, y value will be incremented. Similarly, whenever you create the object, the constructor will be called. So I just for example, I'm going to call three times. So after calling three times, let's see the value of x and y. For that we have to print the value. Just we'll print the value for s1 dot x, similarly s1 dot y. Similarly for all the three objects, first I'm going to print s1 dot x, s1 dot y. The same way we can print the s2 and s3. So now when we execute this program, so when you look at the output, we can understand the memory place of the static data as well as the non-static data, that is a object data. So here we have, this is a object data, and since we applied static, this is a class data, right? So if you see that x is actually, we are printing x first, s1 dot x, x2 dot x, s3 dot x, and all x variables having the one time only incremented, even though we created three objects, only one time it is incremented, right? So it means that, so x data is a different memory location for all the objects. So it is a independent, s1 dot x is independent from s2 dot x, similarly s3 dot x. But when you look at the y value, you can understand that it is updated 3. So 3 times it is incremented. So hence, so here what you can understand is the y is a common memory where 3 times, when we create three objects, 3 times the y will be incremented in one place. And when you display using s1 dot y, similarly s1 dot s2 dot y, s3 dot y, we are getting the recent updated value. So after first time it is incrementing 1, the second time when you create second object it is incrementing 2, then third time it is incrementing 3. So you'll be getting 3. The latest value is 3. So this is how the static data is working. So that is all about static data. So static data is a class data and non-static data is object data. The next we'll discuss about static method. So like static variable, we can also create static method in Java class. So static methods belongs to the class rather than the object. So similar to that static data, it is belongs to class. It is not for a particular object. So static method can be called by using a class name. There is no need of object to access it, but still we can access it by using object. Static method can access static data only. So that is one more rule. If you try to access non-static data from static method, you'll get compiler error. So here I have one example. Let's see the example. What is the difference between static method and non-static method? So here I have a class called static test. So inside I have two functions. One is multiply and add. So multiply is a non-static method. So there is no static keyword is applied. And add function is a static method. So how we can access these both functions? So to access this multiply function, you need object. So we have to create object static test st equal to new static test. Using this object, we can access the stat multiply function. Why? Because it is non-static method. So non-static methods are actually object method. Object, a particular object method. But static method is a class method. So class method you can access by using a class name. So now in the next line you can see how this add function is accessed here by using the class name. We are using a class name and put a dot and we can pass the value. So this is about the static method concept. Static method is belongs to the whole class. It's a global method of a whole class. There is no need of a particular object to access the static method, right? So we can use the class name to access the static method. So if you have a static method like this, you can easily without creating object, we can access the static method by using static the class name, whatever class name we have used right here. Static test is a class name, right? So static test dot add function you have to use. So this is about static method, and we have in this video we discuss about what's the use of static keyword to create a static data and static method, and you have understand the difference between the static members and non-static members. Static members are actually class members and non-static members are called object members. Thank you.